Welcome to Keys for Home. I'm with Mad Eye Moody. Why would I call you that today?
Let's go back to the hair.
Look at that hair. Look at that hair. Woohoo! That's crazy.
55 years of hair.
Yeah. But, you know, it's windy here in Tennessee. We're getting another storm front. Nothing like what they had last week.
No.
We were going to talk about house hunting today. We were going to talk about expectations and audacity. But some things have come up that I want to talk about for sale by owner. I mentioned that last week. I've done some of those for my buyers. I want to talk about it from the buy and the sell side. But as we always do, Mark should be joining us. He's got a very busy day going on. A lot of people trying to get their finances in order to buy a house and just to be able to breathe in our economy. What else is going on in your world this week, Lance?
Just to point out, we're still at 6 minutes and 27 seconds, if that matters.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. What's going on? Applications are up still. Interest rates are up a little bit. I mean, they stepped back a couple days last week, and they seem to.
But wait, they came on and said the Fed didn't change the interest rates today.
Yep. So, yeah, nothing super big is changing. And plus, they're going to see this on Monday morning. So it'll be different again. Apps are up. We need Mark services. It's harder and harder to get people qualified right now. So, but everyone's interested. I mean, over the weekend, a past customer called me that I'd referred to you in the past, and he's like, "Hey, is Jennifer still in the business?" I'm like, "Absolutely. Let's get in touch with her." He's like, "I got to sell my property." So
I had a long call with him yesterday, and then his wife. So we'll have a catch up on that.
Good deal. So, like we've talked about, people move for different reasons.
I talked to them last year, and then it was slow. They wanted just market updates. And so I talked to them in the spring, but then there was not a lot of updates between then and now. So, you said something about nothing free. Oh, I know, price of houses. So, I mentioned before that in 2016, the average Nashville house was $225. And now
it's 2016.
Now it's $450. And inflation has gone up at other times too, but a lot of people don't understand how inflation works. And it's, adding money, we've said that the COVID money and the rescue plan and that was a lot of the problems with where we are right now. They did a survey, and I can't remember what exact percent, but it was the majority by far. It wasn't like 51% of buyers during that time period used their COVID payments as their down payments on their home, because they couldn't do it before that. They didn't feel like they could. And rates were low. And, I've said before, and you've said, well, when I bought my first house, the rates were, 9, 10, 12, 18 in the 80s or, late 70s. But my first house was $103,000. It wasn't $350,000. It wasn't $450,000. And, the way I tried to explain it to my kids with the money and, centralized bank, and I'm not an economist, but if I say to you, if I show you a piece of cake or a cake, Lance, and I've got it cut into 4 pieces, and I say, I'm going to buy that house for 2 pieces of cake. You're like, all right, that's a fair deal. And then I turn around and I cut the cake into 16ths, and I'm still giving you 2 pieces. Are you happy?
No, a lot.
You have 1/8 of a cake instead of half a cake. And then, that's what's been going on as we add money. We're minimizing the value of it.
Sounds historical.
Yeah. There
before in history.
I read a deep economics article because somebody on Facebook, nothing's wrong on Facebook. Somebody had put up on a comment on one of my friends that 40% of all money printed in American history was printed during the Biden administration. And so I'm like, that's odd. So I did a fact check, and the first fact check, because you fact check your fact checks. The first fact check that came up was like, no, this is incorrect. But then I found myself joyfully, not because I'm a history major, not a math major, reading an economic dissertation on money, and it wasn't that was necessarily printed, but that was added to, and not in the history of, but like the way that we are calculating things. So it was a simplified version. It was not that the idea was completely inaccurate. if that makes sense. But
Right.
stories for another day and different brains than mine. So do you know why I called this episode? Did our banner leave too?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's just cut off because we're doubled. So the title of this one is series 2, episode 4, and it is maybe I don't have it down there. Ta-da! Winking in the Dark.
There you go.
Do you know how listing your house for sale by owner and winking at a girl in the dark are the same?
Nobody's going to see it.
You know what you did, but no one else does. So that being said, I have sold between, 6 and 12 for sale by owners. This is not off market. These were listed for sale by owner to my clients in the 14 years I've been in business.
How many houses have you gone, knocked on the door and said, you're making a mistake, I can help you sell this house? I noticed you hadn't sold this house for 6 months.
I don't really do a lot of that because I find a lot of people do it in a very offensive manner.
The going after the business portion.
Yeah.
You're dumb. What the hell's wrong with you? I can fix that. Right.
Right. And there are some people who would probably be okay listing their house themselves. It is a small number. When I, as a realtor, was going to list my house last June, I very much considered, did I want an agent to represent me as that buffer in that negotiation thing? Because we get emotional during these kinds of transactions, and I don't want emotions to ruin a good transaction for the other party or myself because one of us is all wound up, right? So there are different places to find for sale by owners. I had one client find some land that we bought on a buy land in Tennessee board. And it's funny because sometimes people who are for sale by owner is, I don't have an agent. And I call up, because I tell my clients, if you see a for sale by owner that you think might work for you, don't call them. I'm your agent. That's my job. Right. Give me the address or the closest address if it's land or you can't tell. Give me the phone number and then I'll do my thing, just like if it was represented. So sometimes, I call up and I'm like, hey, this is Jennifer Weithman with Benchmark. I have a client who's interested potentially in your property. And then I would ask, are you working with agents? Because we used to not be able to put compensation into the purchase and sale. That's changed now. That's why this whole thing of having it inside, I've negotiated my payment in multiple ways already anyway. So some of them are like, no, absolutely not. I don't want an agent. I said, I'm not talking about for you. I'm talking about, would you work with a buyer who had an agent? And some of them are like, no. Okay. Why not? I don't understand, but okay. And some of them were like, sure, but I'm not paying them. And then I would, at that time, I'm like, okay, well, what do you think what are you asking for your house? Especially on a sign call. And let's say that they say, history major math again, 500,000. And I said, okay, that is the number that I am supposed to tell my client. This house is available for 500,000. But just like a house on the MLS, it doesn't mean that's what the offer is going to be.
Right.
The offer could be 450 or it could be 600, whatever. Most people aren't going to go over what the seller says. In parts of Europe, it's listed for on offer for on market for offers over 500,000, which means they'll entertain offers over that, which is an interesting way to phrase it. So then I'd say, okay, well, my client would like to roll my compensation essentially into the loan. So if we offered you 515, if they were gonna, or 512 or whatever my negotiated amount with my client was, 520 or whatever. Hold on, Arrow, get back here. You're not going outside. Then would you entertain the offer because you're still netting what you would net anyway? So they're like, oh, maybe. A couple of times the seller didn't have those margins or adamantly, just for whatever mental reason, it's their choice, did not want to pay that other agent, right? Me. And so, once or twice my buyers had additional resources that they brought to the table to pay me. once they had resources, but not to what we had agreed to. And so we, when I was selling their house, we had negotiated an amount I was selling their house for, and we added the shortfall to that sale. It wasn't tied in because that's a tying agreement. You can't do those. But we just added the amount that they would owe me. So there are different ways to get the same thing done. And there are different reasons that people want to do for sale by owner. If I am representing a buyer on a for sale by owner, invariably I'm doing not twice the work, but 3 times the work. Because the other side doesn't usually live in this world day in and day out, and
Right.
things go sideways. But because of that, because I'm involved in it and I'm a member of the Tennessee Association of Realtors, as well as national and local, I have access to the Tennessee. I don't have access to being able to speak, but I have access to the Tennessee Association of Realtors contract docs.
Right.
So the confirmation of agency, which is a legally required document, who's representing who, how's everybody involved in this transaction. The property disclosure, that's a legally required in Tennessee. Who's involved? What's the situation of this property? Even if you're selling for sale by owner, I can provide that for you. The purchase and sale agreement, and this is what I really want to lean into a little bit on this. It might be longer than it needs to be, but the Tennessee Association of Realtors purchase and sale agreement is 11 pages long.
Okay.
I know 2 people, I lied to you. It's 12 in the 13th pages signatures because they revise things every year. This arose, the lawyers look at the documents. Do we need to add anything, take anything out, modify wording? What do we need to do to prevent a situation? So I have 2 case studies I want to tell you about. One is a friend of mine, and they had, bought and sold houses before, not as investors or anything, but they wanted to try to sell for sale by owner, and they made a negotiation prior to COVID's run on equity. So we're going to use round numbers. They listed their house and got a buyer for like $325,000. They were not able, as you know, sometimes happens, Lance, to close that for a year. My friends were not needing to live in that house. They were going to have to rent in a different area for other reasons.
Okay.
So the house was available to be rented. So they said, okay, rent it for this amount and close on this and so day, I think it was 13 months. Okay. Now pause for just a second. Remind me, we also probably need to, in this one, discuss lease purchase options. Okay. So when I get done with these 2 case studies, I'll make a note that we should talk about lease.
I want to talk about those.
Because it's a mess. Okay. So they make this arrangement. They're smart people. They go to a title attorney, a lawyer, to draft the purchase agreement.
Okay.
It's like 4 or 5 pages long. It said that they were going to close on a certain date. It said how much rent was going to be and that it did not apply to the purchase. It had an inspection period. It talked about who was paying for title, all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. But only 5 pages.
Yep. What it did not have was what type of loan it was. And originally it was a conventional loan that the guy was going to get. But he was a veteran and he wanted to switch it to a VA loan. Now, there was no harm or foul for my sellers involved, but that plays in the story.
Sure.
I'm sorry, it was an FHA. I lied to you. He got a better rate on the FHA than the conventional, which I think is sometimes common at certain credit scores, right?
Yes, they're better sometimes. VA is typically going to be your best, but
yeah, exactly. That's why I was like, hold on, it was FHA. Okay, so they make this deal spring of 19. No, I'm sorry, I lied again. early winter of 20. And it's supposed to close like around this time in 21. Because 20 was the year prices ran up.
Yes.
And they ran up again in 21. That's why I was like, hold on. So their house went from like 325 to like 375, so to speak. Yes.
325 to what?
Like 375, 400. Like considerable. Okay.
Overnight. Yep.
They now don't want to sell it to this guy for that price, right?
Yep.
Guy hasn't bought it yet.
But he's under contract.
He's under contract. So we can't change it unless both sides agree. He ain't going to agree to that.
He knows.
So then he wanted to change his loan. And I said, well, you should have to agree to that. That's in the contract. Both sides have to agree, just like they'd have to agree in price. And if you don't agree, then you can break contract and then you can relist it or do whatever you want to do and get the better price that we're having today.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can stick where you are with conventional and he can stick where he is with conventional and whatever. Well, the contract didn't address that. So that was not an out for them.
Right. Because it was 5 pages instead of, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So then he failed to close on the closing date.
Well, guess what? There probably was no.
So they're still in the contract, even though the closing date was missed. There was nothing to address that. You froze for a little bit. What'd you say?
So there was nothing to address it. That too is left out.
Mm-hmm. So we're still in the contract.
Right.
And they were making a case that the contract did say a closing date and it was passed. And so therefore they were out of contract. He was making the case that no, it wasn't in there. So it went to court. And I hate to tell you, but I don't know the resolution of it, but it was a mess. And I don't know all the details of the resolution. They did have to sell it to him in the end. And I do not believe they got any higher money.
So that was case study 1.
Case study 1.
That's the 6 missing page contract. I don't know. I'm being stupid.
So case study 2, occasionally I'll have a listing and it needs to be pulled off the market for some reason. Something's going on either last year in the economy or in somebody's family situation, or it's the holidays and they don't want to deal with showings then or something, right?
Right. Things happen with families.
I have 4 kids.
In the middle of a loan?
Family. Yeah. Right. So that's what happened. There was a house. It was listed on the MLS. It needed to be pulled from the MLS and it was going to be relisted.
Okay.
Probably 4 to 6 months later. During that period, the sellers received a phone call from a neighbor. Our kids moving back to this area. Did you sell the house? No, we didn't. Are you still wanting to sell the house? Yes, we are. Can we make you an offer? Yes, you can. They went to a lawyer. And I'm not dishing lawyers. we play in this all the time. And a title lawyer might play in segments of it, but not all the wheres and what's fors, right? So they wrote an offer. I don't even think this one was 5 pages. I think it was 3 or 4, okay? I was talking to
a real estate attorney.
Yeah. So the agent called the person up when it came kind of time to, hey, you're going to relist this. And they told them the situation. And that the buyer of their home had outgrown their old home and needed this home. It's close to parents. They're having kids, so it's all good. And it was contingent on selling their old home.
Okay.
Okay. Kick-out clause? No. You know, a kick-out clause.
Jennifer, they're friends. They're their old neighbors.
A kick-out clause is when you got a contract and you've got to get this house sold, but I come to you and I'm like, hey, I'll give you $10,000 more and I don't have a house to sell or whatever. And you go to the person who's under contract fairly and say, hey, I now have offer B. Will you remove your contingent on sale? And if not, within 48 hours, I'm going to take offer B. Not uncommon in real estate. Didn't have that.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
And I said, okay, when do they have, the agent's like, when do they have to have their house under contract or sold by? It's not in there.
Of course it's not.
So now you're in an open-ended contract, and I'm pretty sure that the close date said 30 days from contract on home to sell. That could be in 2050. Sound like a good idea for sale by owner?
Yeah, what happened with that one?
It's still under contract.
Well, it's a mess because the seller can't take a better offer, and they're under contract with no end date, and the buyer's got infinity to sell and a place to move to, and probably an agreed on price, correct?
It's agreed on price, sure.
Yeah, so they're in. Oh gosh, when we talk about contracts, I've been doing this 25 years. Y'all are a broken record, but you know what? They taught us early on. A lot's changed in the 25 years. We had the Great Recession in 2008. We had the admittance of the Dodd-Frank Act to fix a lot of the problems that do exist. I'm not aware of an act or specific named act about what changed reverse mortgages, but that has been cleaned up as well.
Absolutely.
When it went down in 2008, those of us that had been originating for a while at that time, we weren't like, oh.
Wait, you froze again.
What is happening? We were like those changes. One of the things we talked early on in my career before the reform, and there's been multiple reforms along the way with TAR and NAR, and most recently this big kind of mess we're going through or learning to work through, was the difference in contracts. They'd say, the old guys when I started, like, well, they can write it on a napkin and bring it on in.
That is a valid contract. As long as it's not a cocktail bar napkin and people weren't drunk when they wrote it.
I didn't believe it until it happened. And literally, I have closed maybe two. I know one for sure. That was basically written on a trapper keeper while two guys were fishing. And it stood up and it all worked out. But I can tell you of other examples, just like you're naming, Jennifer, the latter example, where an attorney friend drew it up and they were left exposed in all kinds of things. And particularly where it would run into trouble in the ones that I saw in the past had to do with repairs, discovery of repairs. And the TAR I know addresses it. Well, there's the one for me that you talked about.
You have three choices. I love the house. I hate the house. Or, hey, we need to either fix something or give me money. So
right. And the pre-disclosure, I forget the condition report.
Property condition disclosure. That's a legal requirement in the state of Tennessee. You have to, in Tennessee, even if you handwrite out, this is what I know to be wrong with the house. This is what
That's what we would run into trouble with. That form was 90% of the problems.
It's still 90% of the problem in real estate transactions. Because what was the one that I had recently?
Yeah, you and I had one recently. We're like, they're going to have to. That's going to be they can't forget about that.
Somebody bought a house. Oh, I know. They bought a house from an investor, and there was an inspection.
The roof?
No. Roots in the plumbing line. They didn't do a sewer scope, which is becoming really more important, I
know the buyer now.
Mm-hmm. And little kid, it was a rental. Little kid comes by one of the first weekends they're in the house. I used to live here. The second day in the house, it wasn't gross sewer, but there was backup in the house. And they're like, really? Because they'd called and they're like, what do we do? And I said, you have to prove that the seller knew about it. Mm-hmm. And landlords sometimes think they're exempt because they didn't live there for the last 3 of the last 5 years or whatever it says. But if you know about it, you're still supposed to disclose it. So the little kid rides by on his bike. Oh, I used to live here. And they're like, really? Do you have any problem with backups? Yeah.
Oh no.
Maybe those buyers should find the parents of that little kid and see if that's why they quit their rent. But you have a 3-year on that, is my understanding. And you have to prove that the seller's new. And I've said it before. If I went to sell my parents' home, I have a property condition exemption. I didn't live there. But one of the questions is, has there been water intrusion in the house? Well, they had a tree limb come and stick through their house. Didn't crash through, just like literally one of the down pokies. And my roofer happened to be at my house. We left my house, went over to my mom's house. They tarped that. He was able to lift that off, tarped it. I went inside with a screwdriver where it was starting to puddle on the drywall, put a bucket under it, poked a hole so it didn't blow out the whole drywall. And they had a pipe burst. All of this has been fixed. But technically, those are water intrusions that I know about. And I would say if I sold really certainly less than 10 years within that time period, I would disclose it, but maybe even 20, 25. I don't know if it says ever or what it says. You know what I mean? And you know, the way that happens on property conditions the most, somebody else was dealing with a fungal growth situation. And they told me yeah, no, I was like, oh, I showed that house back in 2017 when the people this guy bought it from bought it. And so this person was doing the right thing, tearing out some drywall, fixing the crawl space where the water was intruding and causing moisture to come up. But they had all the trucks over there, and the neighbors, you know, they've come friends with them. Oh, what's going on? Oh, this is in the kids' room. And oh yeah, that's why they moved. You got some complaining to do. So let's talk for a second also about lease purchase.
I wanted to talk about that for a second too. I just heard this. I'm going to stand up and walk away about 20 feet because I just heard this really loud, horrible sound.
Make sure your house hasn't collapsed and the tree's not coming through it.
Oh well, I'm back.
Okay.
So lease purchases. So lately there's a bunch of commercials on the radio that are playing here in Tennessee, and it's like, new home buyers, would you like to rent a home with an option to purchase? Entire neighborhoods in Murfreesboro, entire neighborhoods in Madison. They're brand new, and they're like, you know, it's a lease to purchase, and you know, payments starting at XYZ, which are pretty cheap. As long as you've got 3 times the income of whatever the payment is, if you've got 3 times that,
and
you
the credit
qualify.
score, whatever.
Yeah, I'm like, I'd never heard these before. And in talking with you in our BNI group that we have in Spring Hill, when I drive that way, there's Port Royal. If I got off at Port Royal and turned left, there's an entire subdivision that is like that. It was all bought. It was built for investors to buy and lease out.
Those have not been up for sale though. Those are investors.
They have not. Yeah.
Yep, you froze.
Or not.
Yeah.
What is the I'm hearing on the radio? How are they getting around the value piece?
Okay.
So
there's different lease purchase things. First of all, Tennessee Association of Realtors has removed lease purchase documents that we used to have that they had crafted. The entire time I've been a realtor, those have not been a thing. Because just like the property condition disclosure was the most sued upon piece of paper, those had been. They're just rife with difficulty. People don't understand it. People are looking for the quick, easy fix instead of working with Mark to get themselves in a position where they can buy. That's what's going on.
In 25 years, we've never closed one.
Right. And
they started out, but then there were all types of pitfalls. And you can talk about it from your side, and then I'll tell you my side.
So what people don't understand is I'm going to rent your house from you, Lance. And
Excellent.
I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month rent. Maybe the next year I'm $1,500. Maybe the year after that I'm $2,000, and I have to buy it in 5 years. Where is that $1,000 going for? What am I paying you $1,000 for?
Don't
to
know.
lease your house.
Okay.
It is the money I'm giving you for the privilege of staying under that roof.
Okay.
It does not go to the $200,000 that we agreed to sell me the house for. It's separate.
Okay.
And that's one of the hangups that people don't understand, that you are going to owe rent for the privilege of staying in somebody else's home.
Mm-hmm.
They think it should go towards that. The next thing that happens all the time is, and sometimes this happens with regular rentals, but it happens more with lease purchase. Let me think of a good example. The water heater dies. Who's responsible?
It's not, yeah. It better be in the contract.
And let's say that it's you, Lance. You're the landlord. You're responsible. And you're going to just go get a water heater. You're not going to spend a ton of money.
I'm busy this week.
But I want a tankless water heater.
Because I'm buying the house.
Because I've got 4 kids and I'm buying the house. So I'm just going to put it in the tankless.
I'm really busy this week, though. I don't think I can get it in.
No, I pay to get it in. I pay to get it in.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And I'm supposed to buy the house in 12 months. Let's say, not even say it's a 3-year drawn out. But 9 months in, let's say I fixed that. I put in new flooring, whatever. I wanted to improve it. There was a great deal. It's what I wanted. I put it in. And 9 months in, 3 months before I'm supposed to purchase, my company transfers me, or I get divorced, or my spouse dies. And now what am I buying this house or not buying this house? Probably not. Well, Lance, I put in that flooring and I put in that water heater, and I spent time to do the maintenance on your house, give me that money.
Sorry, Charlie.
Correct. And people, just like when I talk to people who are not married, buying a house with a friend or a romantic partner, and it happens all the time. And the friends are happening a lot more too, because of the price of houses.
Yeah.
Right. I get it. I tell them, if you are married and you're buying a house with someone, there is a legal document about what happens when it's dissolved. If something happens, if somebody dies or the relationship dissolves, you don't have that if you're buying a home, whether you're living in it or investing in it. So you better work all of that out beforehand. What happens if somebody passes? What happens if this relationship goes south? Who's responsible for what? If I put down $15,000 of the down payment and the closing costs, and you put down 12, are we even amount, or are we doing a ratio? If I'm paying the mortgage and we're splitting the mortgage, and I'm paying this and you're paying this, it can be a mess. And everybody thinks it's not going to happen. And I am always very fast to say, I'm not even talking about the end of the friendship or the relationship. What happens if somebody passes? And if they're a younger person, a lot of times, how many times do you know of a situation where one of the parents did not like the fiance, whether male or female fiance?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just pretend that I am in a relationship or I'm engaged to so-and-so. And well, obviously, if you do, but I'm not so-and-so. But anyway, let's say I'm in an engagement situation and the person has parents and I have parents.
Okay.
And we bought a house together. Unless you do the title work correctly, if I pass, that person now owns it with my next of kin, my kids, my parents, whatever.
Oh my gosh. No one's ever presented that to me.
Yeah. I had another situation where a couple had been separated for, I think, 15 to 20 years.
Damn.
But still married. And she had a boyfriend, a long-term boyfriend. And they were moving back to Tennessee. And Tennessee is a marital split property state. and they were going to be on the title to the house together. And I said, you guys got to talk to a title attorney first, because what you don't want to have is her pass away and now the husband and the boyfriend own a house together. Right?
Correct. I had never known that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You need to
So
talk
I'm
about
not
that at
telling people,
BNI. You need to talk about that at BNI.
Yeah.
Or have our title attorney talk about it a little bit.
And speaking of title attorney, so we are going to, I believe, let's talk about some dates really quick. Well, before I do that, I'm not saying in this episode that absolutely you must have a realtor and la-di-da, we're so fancy and we know everything. But what is that one commercial? We know a lot because we've seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A good realtor knows a lot because they've seen a lot.
Yep.
Or they're connected to other agents who have known and seen a lot, or all of it. So I did have a friend. She didn't work for a title company and she didn't work for a title lawyer, but she was involved in maybe the title insurance policy issuing company. She had a long-term job that was involved in real estate. And she did sell her home and buy her new home for sale by owner. Interestingly enough, 2-3 years later, she decided to become a realtor, because I think even she learned things along the way.
You've heard me say it. I think being a lender is particularly slow these last couple of years, but I always used to joke, I'm like, I think a lender should be required to have to move every 2 years just so they can be reacclimated to what it really feels like. Because
Dear God,
even, let's use
agreeing
you.
with
You did a new home last year, and you're a seasoned grizzled, and that's a compliment. You're a seasoned grizzled. I'll kick everyone out. You know what's going on, and you were stressed out. And you were stressed out about what was going on.
Yeah.
When I bought this house, it's been 8 years now, but I was like, I'm the top guy in town, blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, what's that? Jennifer, am I going to get it? Who? Renee? What? And it was very stressful. And people need people. I don't. At the end of the day, people don't let people call 1-800 numbers, as you like to say.
Yeah.
We need people. We have to have people to guide us through, or we're going to make mistakes.
And sometimes you need a buffer position. Like I said, I really considered, did I have an agent list my house or did I do it myself? I think I've mentioned on the podcast, I know you're familiar with it. Before I did real estate, I did senior move management. So I helped older adults our age help their senior parents move, either into their home or into assisted or into a condo or just a downsized ranch that didn't have stairs. And it wasn't that the adult child wasn't competent, but what it allowed my clients to do is take a step back. If mom or dad was having a lot of emotions or confusion, the adult child could tend and help the parent while the show continued. The show was still on the road. Same thing if the adult child sometimes, oh my gosh, we're getting rid of that picture. I've always seen that picture, you know what I mean? But I don't have a place for it either. So the adult child could process their emotions of it. Yeah. So having those professions, like I said, to not let things get emotional, to have the knowledge and experience of it, it's critical. The other thing is, you asked me if I door knocked for sale by owners. I don't do that. I have no problem helping a for sale by owner. I would bring a client to a for sale by owner. But the reason this is called winking in the dark is because not only am I going to put it on the MLS, because there are services that you can pay a flat fee for, but I'm going to assist you, stupid things, with a lockbox that's not a combo, so that if I give the combo, you give the combo to Joe. How do you know that Joe's not giving it to someone else, or that his kids don't see it written down and then come have a party at your vacant house?
What? That would never happen.
Or to facilitate showings, I'm not having a lockbox. I'm going to be the person there opening the door. Well, great. I think everybody has heard or been involved in a showing where the seller is still in the home and how uncomfortable it is, because the buyer wants to be able to talk about it, which we've got cameras everywhere. So be careful on that, certainly on the front porch or the driveway, but also.
Did you know that from personal experience, Jennifer?
I don't, but I know that people have had situations. I'm not selling my house to them. I heard them say that picture, that rug that Granny gave us was horrific.
I have had realtors that's literally happened to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This year.
And gosh darn, that'll be a whole nother episode. I've had sellers that I'm like, please don't watch your video because you might get hurt feelings and you might inadvertently end up breaking fair housing. What do you mean? You may be really excited about the couple that comes through that has kids the same age as yours when you bought this house, and they're all excited about this, that, and the other. And then the single person who comes through, you don't know if they do or don't have kids, but you're already favoring in your mind that person who is like you. Don't do it. That'll be a whole nother episode. Okay, so episodes with title. I believe that we are going to have our title person in the month of February. Got very crazy on us all. Snow, travel, everything else. So I think that the title person is going to be in to talk with us on the 9th of April.
Okay.
We mentioned a live first-time buyers seminar. We don't have the place set confirmed. We're 95% sure. But I think that's going to be on Tuesday, April 29th. I think we said 6:30 or 7 o'clock. So we've got like 3 or 4 weeks between now and then. We will get that announced and we'll have Eventbrite things or meetup announcements, all different. You'll be able to see it if you're in Middle Tennessee. And then we can talk about doing some of those on Zoom for the people who are elsewhere. And then I think what we're going to do is about every 3 episodes have a special guest. Sometimes it'll be like titled directly related to real estate. Sometimes it might be, like we have a great life insurance friend and talk about life insurance or getting a will because now you own a home, or you move to a different state and that will is now invalidated because the house is different. Everything else is different.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So anything else that you want to share with us before we wrap up?
No, let's wrap up. I got some things to talk off base with you, but
I'll call you because it's laggy.
Well, the good weather's here and things are getting better, so I'm excited to talk about this as we progress in the year.
Yep, I've got a listing coming live on the 28th, so 9 days, and then I've got to talk to someone about one in Clarksville. I have a listing appointment in Columbia on Thursday.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, good activity happening. So, until next time.
Until next week.
See you.